just a couple announcements. If anybody wants to share the open mic portion, this little sign-up sheet is up front. If you're interested, we're recruiting folks to take a workshop series that Marianne's going to take, and it starts next week. It's called Acting for Writers. There's some flyers up front. If you're interested, I'll tell you all about it. So let me turn the mic over to Marianne, who is going to be emceeing the next portion of the evening. It is a great pleasure to have her as a colleague and a friend. So welcome, Marianne.
I'm looking forward to the workshop.
Yes, please come.
I know Michael and Whitman are both hard acts to follow, but we shall try. And one of my bosses always said, go in alphabetical order, so I think I will with the poets. And this is our anthology. Well, actually, this is one of my former teachers' anthology, Joan Dobby, and her niece, Grace Keeler, put together this anthology before there was nowhere to stand. And going in alphabetical order, we'll start with Stephen Bess, and he teaches at Montgomery College, and he has a book of poetry available on Amazon titled Liquid Lunch Blues-Inspired Poetry. And thank you for coming up from Driving Land.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I must admit that when Marianne asked me, I didn't realize that it was on Father's Day. My wife was like, why would you do that on Father's Day? Well, then I said, well, this is important. So it's still great to be here. Thank you. I'm going to read three poems from the anthology. The first one that I'm going to read is titled Waters of Gaza by John Michael Simon. June 22nd, 2009. They moved out of Gaza, not without protest, not without prayer, feeling like ivy ripped off the walls, like irrigation pipes torn from the soil. They moved out on unwilling legs, on buses to nowhere, fathers, mothers, children, and children without fathers, without mothers. They moved into Gaza not without covet, not without envy, feeling like water released from a dam, bursting into surrendering fields, carrying all before it, trees, houses, places of prayer, fences, gardens, waves breaking over alien temples again and again till water covered all. After the water came briny hatred, lusting for a redder liquid, and the skies darkened again. Lightning and thunder returned to Gaza, rained on this thin strip of unhappiness, writhing between the wrath of history and the dark depths of the sea. That was Waters of Gaza. The next one is titled I Have No Home by Youssef El Kedra. I saw clouds running away from the hurt. I have no language. Its weight is lighter than a feather. The quill does not write. The ink of the spirit burns on the shore of meaning. The clouds are tears filled with escape and lacking definition. A cloud realizes the beauty she forms, beauty which contains all good things, for whom trees, gardens, and tired young women wait. I have no home. I have a night overripe with sweats caused by numbness all over. Time has grown up on its own with me. In my dream, I asked him what he looks like. My small defeats answered me, so I asked him again. What did he mean? Then I found myself suspended in nothingness, stretched like a string that doesn't belong to an instrument. The wind played me, so did irresistible gravity. I was a run of list notes that have a sad, strong desire to live. And this last piece is called Letter from a Prison Camp, and it's by Samia Al-Qasim. Mother, it grieves me that because of me throughout your night of agony, you shed silent tears, anxiously awaiting the return of my beloved brothers from their chores, that you are not able to eat while my seat remains empty and there is no talk or laughter. How it pains me, mother, that tears rush to your eyes when friends drop by to ask about me. But I believe, mother, that the splendor of life is being born within the walls of my prison. And I believe that the last of my visitors will not be an eyeless bat coming to me by the night. Surely the light of day will dawn, and dazzled by it, my jailer will be humbled. He will fall to the ground broken, shattered, burnt by daylight. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And next is Jean Freedman. She's actually really the force behind this reading. If it weren't for her, I don't think we'd be here, because we were at this event at the college, and she was saying, you know, aren't we going to read again? You know, we need a do-over. And here we are. Jean teaches history and women's studies at Montgomery College in Rockville, Maryland, and she's writing a biography of Peggy Seeger.
Yeah. Awesome. I hadn't realized I was the force behind this. I thought Marianne and Elizabeth were the forces behind it. Okay. The first poem I'm going to read is by Rachel Barenblatt, who's an American poet who is also a rabbi. And it's entitled In the Same Key. They come together to bury their father in the cave where Sarah's body lies. No one imagines the vaulted church turned mosque with painted ceilings, or the synagogue, or metal detectors to keep armed men from getting through. Isaac and Ishmael wash him with water and sprinkle sand on his eyelids, so his visions in the world to come will derive from the land he loved. Isaac's memories of having a brother and then losing him without explanation. Ishmael's memories of aching thirst before his mother saw the spring go unmentioned. The bones of their past buried beneath the drifting sands. Outside the cave, the women wail, two families grieving in the same key. Abraham's dark eyes in every face. And the second poem is by an Israeli poet, Attar Hadari, and it's called They Asked Us to Imagine. They asked us to imagine for a moment what peace would look like. I closed my eyes and saw the Allenby Bridge ablaze with business at midnight or 4 a.m. or just for breakfast. Women and children and motorbikes crossing from Israel to Jordan or the other way, just shopping. It takes a long time, reverse. The natural motion is forward. Blowing up bridges is fast. The night of the bridges reversed takes decades. But I believe that light one day will force my eyes open, and in the faltering night I will see one or two, even three shoppers. But the juggernaut takes time to stop, and meanwhile the cold cars roar past the not yet abandoned checkpoint, and no one carries bread across the Jordan. But one crust of bread, dropped in that water, would crumble and make its memory of bread a new sea to wash everybody clean of rubble. And one little biscuit falls in the water of the Jordan. And who can forget what they so often held? A flower, sweet as cinnamon, but so hard to keep soft without opening your hand. And the next poem is by an Arab-American poet, Naomi Shihab Nye, and it's called Jerusalem. It opens with a quote from Tommy Olofsson that says, "Let's be the same wound if we must bleed. Let's fight side by side, even if the enemy is ourselves. I am yours, you are mine." And this is Jerusalem. I'm not interested in who suffered the most. I'm interested in people getting over it. Once, when my father was a boy, a stone hit him on the head. Hair would never grow there. Our fingers found the tender spot and its riddle. The boy who has fallen stands up. A bucket of pears in his mother's doorway welcomes him home. The pears are not crying. Later, his friend who threw the stone says he was aiming at a bird. And my father starts growing wings. Each carries a tender spot, something our lives forgot to give us. A man builds a house and says, "I am native now." A woman speaks to a tree in place of her son, and olives come. A child's poem says, "I don't like wars. They end up with monuments." He's painting a bird with wings wide enough to cover 2 roofs at once. Why are we so monumentally slow? Soldiers stock a pharmacy. Big guns, little pills. If you tilt your head just slightly, it's ridiculous. There's a place in my brain where hate won't grow. I touch its riddle, wind and seeds. Something pokes us as we sleep. It's late, but everything comes next. And then finally, I'm going to do something that's not in the collection. I'm going to do a song for you that I wrote just about 10 days ago. One of the things I love about this collection, if you haven't seen it, it's this wonderful collection called Before There Is Nowhere to Stand. And one of the things that I love about it is that it presents many different points of view, but it doesn't try to have any kind of false synthesis. And that's what I've tried to do in this song. It presents different points of view. Sometimes it's obvious who's speaking, sometimes it's not. I based it on an old labor song called "Which Side Are You On" by Florence Reese. And that was about an event in which side taking was fairly easy. This is not. And I'm using the phrase "which side are you on" a lot more ironically. And that's about it. Come all of you good people, a story I will tell of the land and of the people that in this land do dwell. They say we lived together once, built houses and grew grains. When Abraham tended his flock, your blood ran in my veins. When Saladin ruled Damascus, your sister was my bride. Our mother sewed the wedding dress, our father sat side by side. But those are only stories of a time so long ago. My home was taken from me, I had nowhere to go. I thought you would defend me, at least you might have tried. No more are you my brother, You are now the other side. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? We came from blood and fire. We came to rocks and sand. When no safe harbor sheltered us, we dreamed of this land. We traveled many miles. We only wished to stay. In Europe they were killing us. Now you turn us away. My father farmed this olive grove. His father farmed it too. I tell you now, this land you claim does not belong to you. The olive trees are broken. There's blood upon the sand. My children live in exile. You have taken away my land. The stories that sustained us divided you from me. They built high walls and prisons. Your truth didn't set me free. We each tell our stories. We recall the hurt and blame. We each tug on the hand of God, and we kill in His name. Our stories have no endings. We'll have to write them now. Oh, my brothers and my sisters, won't you please show me how? When the olive trees grow healthy, when the walls come tumbling down, when we walk again as brothers in the fields and in the towns, when injustice has no quarter, when each captive soul is free, when our children laugh together, may they laugh at you and me. And when all hate is gone, who knows which side we'll be on. Thank you.
I'm glad that Joan and Grace are going to be able to listen to this song because, well, my husband's taping this. And, thank you, Jean. Next, alphabetically, is one of our two poets from the collection, Mike Maggio. He's published fiction, poetry, travel, and reviews in a wide variety of venues. And he's written several books, including Oranges from Palestine, which I won in a contest. And also, he has a book that's being re-released. It's a novel in the Valley of Granite and Steel, and it's the archetypal Washington novel. He's an assistant adjunct professor at Northern Virginia Community College and a graduate of George Mason University's MFA program in creative writing, and he's going to be reading some poems, his and others, from the anthology.
Thank you, Marianne. And I had the same problem at home about Father's Day. And I said, hey, it's Father's Day. I get to do what I want. But I did feel guilty all day about this. So I'm going to read 4 poems. First 2 will be ones that I've written. And the first one involves an Arabic lesson. So let me just see if I can find it. So let's see if you guys can do this. So there are a couple of Arabic phrases in here. Ibn Khal, which means maternal uncle. So Ibn means son. So it's son of my maternal uncle, which, means cousin, on my mother's side. Then there's Ibn Am, which is the opposite, it's cousin on my father's side. There is Ibn al-Ard, which literally means son of the earth, but of course means wanderer. Then we have Ahlul Kitab, which means people of the book. And I think that's all of it. And you guys think you can remember that? Okay, because it's important. Okay, so this is called Sunday Morning Amman. Here in Amman, the church bells ring. There are Christian people here. They are our brothers. They are Ibn Khal. Here in Amman, on Al-Farabi Street, amid umbrellas and T-boys and photocopy machines, there are Palestinian people here. They have come to renew their lives. With passport, ID, and staff in hand, and amber garments, the color of time. They are autumn leaves thrown on the wind. They are our brothers. They are Ibn al-Ard. Here in Amman, the Muazzin calls. There are Muslim people here. From minaret to minaret, a chorus of voices touches the soul. From steeple to steeple, a chorus of bells gathers the souls. Bells and voices mingling, rising over the city, crying out to God and the occupied land. And holy Jerusalem, where Christians and Muslims, Palestinian alike, and Jews on the West Bank, they are all Ahlul Kitab. Jews on the occupied West Bank, they are our brothers. They are Ibn Am. So how was the Arabic? Good. Okay, so the next one is actually not about Israel or Palestine. It's a poem I wrote. I was living in Saudi Arabia during the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq, and which was kind of a surreal experience, since I lived in the airport, which was the staging ground for the war. So this is a poem about that, and it's called Dirge, and it's in several sections, so I'm going to stop in between sections. Dirge. Once we could look at the sky. Birds would flutter from roof to bough, their tiny voices the clicking of cool pearls. Plush clouds would roll by on ambling afternoons, sometimes like floats on parade. And when we least expected, the rain would come, a sudden celebration, a swell of slick black nylon, dripping plump silver raindrops like joyful tears, when the bride and groom first kissed, amid a shower of white rice and cascading confetti. Once we could look at the cool blue sky. The best measure is to have the proper protective clothing and gas mask. If these are not available, you should move as quickly as possible into a building. Seal windows and doors, reduce ventilation, turn off AC. Stay in the room with the lowest airflow. Breathe through a dense towel, or better yet, use towel wrapped around a dry piece of charcoal. Impervious clothing, such as raincoat and tight goggles, can help. Head and body hair should be covered. Do not leave the building or open any doors to the outside. Chemicals should disperse in 1 to 2 hours. After the chemicals have dissipated, quickly leave the area of contamination. Do not pick up items from the outside. I remember the Kurds. There's a picture in Time magazine. Faces frozen like porcelain dolls, carelessly laid. Unknown, forgotten folk, sleeping now, peacefully at last. What had they done to deserve such immortality? Their villages, I hear, were once filled with song, the flute and the tambourine, children dancing at the wedding celebration, clean, bright costumes whirling around their unsuspecting lives. Do you remember the Kurds, their national song silenced, cottages flattened, bodies strewn like matchsticks along the roadside, that strange, imposed sleep? All that's left. One day the soldiers came. It was Fajr, or just before. So much has happened I can't remember. But what we heard was not the adhan. What we saw was not the sunrise. Birds dropping from trees, yellow clouds blistering the sky, cats, dogs, people choking. Where do I turn? Where are the children? When the shooting was over, when the radio station went off the air, when days, maybe weeks, went by and our food supplies ran thin, we got in our cars, shot straight for the desert. An old Bedouin guided us to the border. He knew every dune, every wadi, like the wife he had loved since his 16th year. It was his way of serving, he said, would do so until they shot him. May God protect his gentle soul. We sit and wait. Will the sun rise tomorrow? Will the birds sing their song? Despair, hope, wonder. So many stories to be told. So many yet to be born. So many never to be known. Will anyone hear? Will anyone ever really hear? So I'm going to read a poem by Fedwa Tulkan, who is one of the great Palestinian writers and was quite a feminist actually for her time, when women just didn't write poetry. And she did, and she fought every which way to do what she did, and she became extremely successful. This is called My Sad City, the Day of Zionist Occupation. The day we saw death and betrayal, the tide ebbed. The windows of the sky closed, and the city held its breath. The day the waves were vanquished, the day the ugliness of the abyss revealed its true face, hope turned to ashes, engaging on disaster, my sad city choked. Gone were the children and the songs. There was no shadow, no echo. Sorrow crawled naked in my city. With bloodied footsteps, silence reigned in my city. Silence heavy like crouching mountains, mysterious like the night, tragic silence. Burdened, weighed down with death and defeat. Alas, my sad and silent city, can it be true that in the season of harvest, grain and fruit have turned to ashes? Alas, that this should be the fruit of all the journeying. And one more. This is by Sam Hamad, who's Lebanese. And it's called "There Must Be Something Dangerous About a Zoo in Rafah, Palestine." I love this poem. Just yesterday, the Israeli tank came forward into the zoo, firing round after round. The cockatoos screeched. The macaws went wild in their cages, screen wire smithering into thousands of shreds of death, piercing the 2 a.m. night air, sending the raccoon into panic as his leg sliced open, and the monkey's arm went limp with the crunch of his tree. Hundreds of parrots were caught in the large nest and whisked away in the cab of the bulldozer, while another tank shell shattered the night air, caving in the roof of the keeper's workshed, where Mohammed Juma had worked for months creating a zoo for the children of Rafah, the only recreation in this nightmare of Israeli destruction, where children weren't allowed to go out, fearing Israeli snipers. Old Lady Khamis wanted to stay in her house, bulldozer grinding toward her. Finally, her daughter dragged her, screaming from the falling wall that covered them both with cuts and dust, shattering memories, creating new sorrows. But this zoo, there must have been something dangerous about this zoo, something that worried the Israelis. Perhaps it was the smiles it brought to the children's faces. But now, the fox has run off, Juma says. But no one has any idea where. Probably dug in behind an old shell hole, shivering from the shaking ground as the tank grinds up the last of the bird enclosures. The bulldozer grabs and grabs and grabs, pushing the entire scraps of the defunct zoo into the swimming pool. The macaws cry out mournfully, covering the wailing of women, sobbing of children, the rage and frustration of Juma as he picks up what is left of the sign that says, "Welcome to Rafah. Welcome to our zoo." Thank you.
Thank you for reading your poems, Mike, and for the poems of the other poets in the collection. I know my students love hearing poems from the poets who write them. Our next poet and reader is Bonnie J. Morris, and she's a poet, playwright, historian, and women's studies professor at Georgetown and George Washington. Among her recently published books are Women's History for Beginners, a volume of collected poems, and the Bar Notebooks. She was also profiled on C-SPAN's Book TV recently, so you can watch that. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, the book that was featured on C-SPAN is Women's History for Beginners, and I brought a couple of copies. Hi! I have one poem in our collection, and it's a little too sexy for tonight in this space, but you can look at it later, and that's fine. In honor of Father's Day, I'm going to do a short poem that's a tribute to my father who led me into peace activism, and then a piece about being taken on a very famous peace march with my parents in 1968, I think. The first one is called Father Alphabet, and I'm sure you English professor people know the term for this, but each line begins with a letter of the alphabet and it goes down. It's very short. Arriving by car, Dad, evenings frolicsome, golden, he idles, jaunty night, look, moonflowers, near outside patio. Quickly, Roger sets this underlying vibe. We're explorers, your Zeus. It's from my dad. Happy Father's Day, gentlemen. Now for a change of mood, this is called Tear Gas, and it's based on the historic march from Century City Plaza in Los Angeles to protest the Vietnam War. I was in first grade. It's a warm night. I'm walking down the highway with my parents at the tail end of a very long line of bigger people marching. I can see the brown dust beneath our feet, hear the whiz of cars, but the primary vibe is a wave of two-syllabled sound, all of us chanting, "Peace, now!" And it's a demand, not a polite request, a demand born of conviction. And I add my voice to the wave of adult voices, knowing why I am here, what we are doing. I wear a little gold peace sign, a symbol on a chain around my neck, and a white enamel dove pin on my sweater, though my parents and I lag at the rear of the line because of my short, chubby legs. I feel no separation due to kidhood. It doesn't even matter that I'm 7. I'm moving along with the movement people, accepted, one of them. And the light fades with sunset, and the dusk turns to dark, and then a murky haze cut with searchlights. Of a sudden, there's a shift in the unified body of the march, and then an uproarious scattering I can't understand. Everyone in front of us suddenly turning around, running back at me, into me, over me. My smallness works against me now. I'm knocked to the ground. I'm trampled. What's going on? Where's everybody going? And a tall man stops. He picks me up. He places me atop a low brick wall. I can feel the still sun-warmed cinder blocks supporting me. He promises, "You'll be safe here, just don't move." Maybe I'm on the verge of crying from being kicked around, because magically he produces an almond joy candy bar, the sort of treat I'm only supposed to have on special occasions. And all I can think of is, surely this counts. Surely this is a special occasion, a rare night in my life. This is my private bracha, my shehechianu, the blessing over the meal of my first big political demonstration. My parents, atheists, intermarried, critical of organized religion. I know I am a Jew, but I haven't been to Hebrew school, exposed to any formal history, exposed to Jewish learning yet, or the tradition of Eastern Europe, all my ancestors. Or I would know that in the old country, it was customary for young boys on the first day of school, the first day of learning, to have a honey drop dribbled on their tongue. So they learned the first 2 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, acquainting sweetness with learning, sweetness with the study of the word. For me, this happens at Century Plaza, Los Angeles, 1968, when I am 7, gratefully taking candy from a strange man, a scenario that in any other context would suggest obvious dangers. I will forever equate sweetness with peace activism, with men who resist militarism, with movement people who pause in their own nightmare cacophony to care for a small girl. Perfect safety. But this moment, which I associate with finding kinship and trust and movement people, is at the same time the very moment when my parents feel utterly betrayed. This is supposed to be a peaceful protest. No action, no sit-down strike, no violent provocation, no taunting of police. This was what they had brought me to see. Democracy and pacifism in action. There was a permit for the march. Everyone agreed to keep on moving, one calm and steady loop. But others more radical had messed that up, sat down, blocked traffic, shouted at police. And now police were clubbing heads. The air filled up with tear gas, screaming blood. My Bluebird leader, her best friend, a grown-up we knew named Evelyn, up near the front of the march, runs to jump over one of the freeway walls, rolls down to the ground. The teenage big sister of my schoolmate Ali confronts the police, begs them, "Stop, don't," and gets their billy club in her eye. And my mother looks up and realizes there are security men on the hotel roof with machine guns pointing them at us, at me. And as I have my epiphany with the almond joy bar, my parents maneuver me back, the long way to the car, shaken with betrayal, treading water on the tsunami of radical change. This was no place for a child, their relatives would shame them. 2 hours later, no place for a child, they should have known. So that's an actual incident from our lives. Okay, and 2 little short ones. This is for the Women's Studies faculty. I just had this piece accepted in another Lost Horse anthology, which is going to be a tribute to the Lilly Ledbetter Act and working women. And this is a little thing I wrote for them called Women's Studies Professors Get No Respect. Women's Studies, you still teach that? Isn't everything like equal now? How come there's no men's studies? Isn't that discrimination? I'd like to see everything human studies, eliminate women's history altogether. We don't need it. It's 2014. Hey, is this where all the feminazis hang out? Our lives are still unspeakable. Our history is still scary, plunged in tepid waters of diversity. The first who taught this subject has retired, and feminism slowly packs its house, now boxed up wholly. The language of naming now a dialect, the spoken words of womanhood soon lost. These days I'm feeling shellfish. Not shellfish like the oyster and the crab, just dangerously close to being shelved. As if the women's movement were a book and going out of print, and who reads those? Shellfish, because I prowl for double X on every bookshelf speaking to my sex. The ones who came before we still ignore, or name as strident figures and abhor. I'm known as those who opened up the door. Yeah, I'm underpaid, I'm adjunct, I exist to raise my writing hand up in a fist, so all our history won't fade in the mist. That was fun to do. And this last one is called Sunday Drive, and this is an Inside the Beltway poem about having a crush on a girl who lived in Baltimore the summer I was 18. It's called Sunday Drive, back to today. That summer was strewn with pines, caked flat with waterfall boulders, and wrapped in an old sheet. That summer, hot with flavored rice, dancers in their supplicating poses, soft formations, hail rain on a Buick windshield, bare feet on the red canal path. You rolled your rosy limbs into the end of summer, greeting my ache with your light eyes, your fresh-baked sweets, your breathless laugh, picking your way with ease across the asphalt. Get in, I said. We're going for a drive. Here in the car, a tender cupping ride, both of us bound for our secret battles, driving the edge, the strip from outer Baltimore. I'll leave your flannel kisses there by noon and drive away with that song I never liked and ease my heart to yours. Now, take the wheel. You're driving neatly at the helm, silent, unarmored. Gravel, trees, traffic, a dream of blunders left behind. This car's a journey anyone can see, a moving late oasis. Your open face preserves what is unphotographable, a drive that is an arrow shot into the loving arc of humid August. Your open face shows nothing that is thought but not expressed. Get out, you ask, in disbelieving proudness, and hanging damp-necked from the delicate elbow of the car handle, I worked to keep my cool. Thanks, y'all.
Incredible work. Thank you so much, everybody. Woohoo! Oh yes, my pleasure. Well, we're going to roll right into the open mic section. We have two people.